Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to MTG Foil. Today I've got another guest deck. It's Homsma again, I must say again. And he's having a new pimped out modern deck. Tell me about it.
Yes, I brought my Azorius Sharblade deck with me. It's all foiled.
It's a control type deck, right?
Yes, it's a control tempo type shell.
And how did you come to this deck?
Well, saw the box toppers of the new Stoneforge Mystic and the Better Skull and the whole package. And I instantly fell in love with the new art. So I decided I would buy the deck foil. Came across the Sharkblade shell. And then I instantly fell in love with Sharknado. Because I love the movies. It's terrible. That's why I love them. And now they come to life in Magic.
Sounds amazing. I'm very curious. I know they've got beautiful full art pieces. So yeah, let's dive into it.
I'm going to tell you something about my Azorius Sharkblade deck. The main win condition of the deck is Stoneforge Mystic. It can grab a Better Skull or a Sword of Feast and Famine to grind out your opponents. And it's Enter the Battlefield ability. You can search for either of the two cards. Better Skull is a great 4/4 with Vigilance and Lifelink, great against the aggressive matchups. We have the Shark Typhoon. Shark Typhoon can cycle it. You can get an XX Shark and draw a card. You can make a beautiful Shark token with flying. You can slap a Sword on it or a Better Skull, and it can win you the game really fast. Let's start off with a playset of Flooded Strand. Flooded Strand, it's a fetch land. It can grab plains or an island or a shock land like, for example, Hallowed Fountain, a 2-of. And also, with a Flooded Strand, you can fetch for the Mystic Sanctuary. A 1-of Mystic Sanctuary, obviously a great card because it can put an instant or sorcery on top of your deck. Other basics, we have 2 snow-covered plains and 6 snow-covered islands. We play snow-covered islands because it can mess with your opponents sometimes. Island, they might think you're a snow deck, they might not. And I love the full arts foiled snowlands. Also, we have 1 card in the sideboard that cares about it. We have 4 Field of Ruin. Field of Ruin is a great card. It can find your basics, the colors you need, and also it can destroy your opponent's utility lands. For example, if your opponent might play a Horizon land, they can crack it in the late game to draw a card. You can destroy it so they don't get a card later. Also, if you're playing against Tron, you can use it to disassemble their Tron, destroy their Urza's Tower, and you can live 1 turn longer. We don't play more Mystic Sanctuaries, and I don't want to be choked out or die to a boil. So that's why I play with a 3-of Glacial Fortress. Glacial Fortress, it taps for both the colors. When I have an island or a plains, it comes untapped. That's most of the time. It taps for blue, taps for white. It doesn't get destroyed by a boil. It still untaps with choke. 1-of Celestial Colonnade. It enters tapped, that's the only downside, but it can become a creature in the late game. A 4/4 flying vigilance. It's great at killing your opponent's planeswalkers if you don't have the creatures on board to deal with them, because this deck can't deal with planeswalkers that good. Finally, we have 1 Mystic Gate. You can tap it for colorless, or you can filter your white or blue mana. Also, it's not an island, so it doesn't get destroyed by boil or tapped by choke. And also the reason why we can't play with more Mystic Sanctuaries, because we need 3 islands for the effect. Well, now we had a lands, let's go to the instants and sorceries of the deck. To start off, we play a playset of Path to Exile. 1 mana instant, exile a creature your opponent controls. They get to search a land. Exiling a creature for 1 mana is worth the payoff. For 1 mana, we have Spell Snare. It's a counter spell. For 1 mana, counter target spell with converted mana cost 2. When we are on the draw, we get to play 1 land and our opponent can play their 2-drop. And sometimes you can't really come up to that tempo loss. With Spell Snare, it's 1 mana, counter their 2-drop. You have the advantage again of tempo. What's really important in this kind of thing. Then we have some more counters in Mana League. Mana League is a 2-of. It's a 2 mana, a blue and a colorless. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. It's such a good value in the early game. Disrupt your opponents, protect your threats. It's only 2 mana. Then we have 1 more counter for 2. is the Logic Knot. It's 2 blue plus X, counter target spell unless its controller pays X mana. It has Delve. What this means, you can exile the cards from your graveyard. So you pay 2 blue plus have in your graveyard, you exile it, and your opponent has to pay X. So your opponent has 2 mana up, exile 3 cards from your graveyard, and you can counter it. It's better than Mana Leak in the late game. That's why I play a 1-off. Then we have another counter in Archmage's Charm. Archmage's Charm is a great card, a 2-off. It's 3 blue, most of the time you have it. It's a really good card. Or you counter a spell, or target player draws 2 cards, or you can gain control of target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1 or less. This is great versus the aggressive decks. You can steal their 1-drop to block another creature of theirs. Also, for example, a Death Shadow, you can take control of it, it will die. And drawing 2 cards is also really good if you're searching for something, your opponent didn't play anything. Yeah, sure, I'll play it in your end step, I'll draw 2 cards. Then we have 3 Cryptic Commands. Cryptic Command is a really good card. 4 mana, you can choose 2. Or you counter a spell, or you return target permanent to its owner's hand. You can tap all the creatures down, or you draw a card. So you can use this most of the time to counter a spell and draw a card. So you're 2 for 1 with a card. It's really good. So you can also return target permanent to its owner's hand. You can return your Mystic Sanctuary to your hand. Play it again. Put a Cryptic Command on top. And that way you can kind of loop the Cryptic Command. It's pretty good. Sometimes it just wins you the game. Also, tapping your opponent's creatures down is great when you want to swing in for an attack. When they have lethal on board, you have no removal in hand. You can tap their team, draw a card, and I hope you find something useful. Then we have 3 copies of Force of Negation. Force of Negation is a great card. It's 2 blue and a colorless. Counter target non-creature spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. You can also, when it's not your turn, cast it for free by exiling a blue card from your hand. So against some aggressive combo decks, you can tap out and force something, or Cryptic Command. They want to fail off summon your Cryptic Command. Force to fail off summon, exiling it. Your Cryptic Command now resolves. And to finish things off, we have 4 copies of Opt. It's 1 mana, scry 1, draw a card. It can help you smooth out your draw, search for what you need. You need a Force of Negation, play an Opt for 1 mana, I hope it's on top, if not, scry to the bottom, draw a card. Need a land, find a land. You can just move out your draws a lot. It's a great card. Well, that's all my instants. I don't have any sorceries in this deck, so let's go to the creatures. 3 copies of Snapcaster Mage. It's a 2 mana, 2/1 human wizard with flash. When it enters the battlefield, an instant or sorcery in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. So you can, that Path to Exile you played earlier to remove your opponent's creature. Play the Snapcaster Mage, play another Path to Exile from your graveyard. You can play an Opt to search for something you need. You can give flashback to a counter spell in your graveyard. Use the Archmage's Charm to steal another creature, to draw more cards. Overall, just a great card. And we have 4 copies of the Stoneforge Mystic. Stoneforge Mystic is the card of this deck. We have all this removal, all these counter spells, all these control elements to protect the Stoneforge Mystic from dying. You don't play it on turn 2 unless you have a Force of Negation to protect it. Great card, you play it, you protect it. You search an equipment from your deck, like the Better Skull or the Sword of Feast and Famine. When it ETBs, you can find either of them for 2 mana, you can put them on the battlefield from your hand. So with a Better Skull you get a living weapon. Living weapon means when it enters the battlefield you can attach a 0/0 germ to the Better Skull. So it gives +4/+4 and has Vigilance and Lifelink, equip 5. But when it enters, you immediately get the germ as a living weapon. So it's a 4/4 Vigilance Lifelink. Against an aggressive deck, if you put a Better Skull in play, you can protect it, get in a hit for 4, gain some life back, you probably will win that game. Also with the Sword of Feast and Famine. It gives +2/+2 as protection from black and from green. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, the player discards a card and you untap all your lands. Equip 2. It's a great card because we can play it, equip it, attack. You discard a card, I untap all my land, so it's basically free. When you get to untap your land each turn, That's insane, because you can play cards, untap your lands, have your cryptic commands, your mana leaks, your path to exile, snapcaster mages. You can play them all in your opponent's turn, so you can basically do a lot of things per turn, and that's stuff that wins you games, so that's really nice. Also, to equip these Sword of Feast and Famine and the Better Skill too, we have the Snapcaster Mage in the Stoneforge Mystic and the Germ, but we also have 3 copies of Shark Typhoon. Shark Typhoon is a great card. It's a 6 mana enchantment. When you cast a non-creature spell, create an XX blue shark creature token with flying, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. It also has cycling. You basically never cast this card as an enchant. You always cycle it, because when you cycle it, you can put X mana in it, create an XX shark, and where X is whatever X was. So if you have 3 mana, pay 2 life for the cycling, plus 1 X, it's a 1/1 in the early game. It can jump a creature, it draws you a card. It's a fine deal. But when you do have a lot of mana, you can cycle it in your opponent's end step when they didn't present something you wanted to counter. Make a 3/3, a 4/4 shark if the game goes long. And it is flying, it is evasion, it ends the game really quick. You can stick the Sword of Feast and Famine on it, it is flying, it can connect every turn. You can equip a Better Skill on it. It's a huge threat with lifelink, vigilance, flying, evasion. It will close the game out. Then we have some Planeswalkers. We have 2 copies of the Fairy Time Raveler. Everyone hates this card, I love it. Each opponent can cast spells only anytime they could cast a sorcery. Basically what it does, your opponent can only play stuff in their main phase. You can have complete control over what they do. It says +1, you may cast sorcery spells though they have flash. I don't care about this ability, I don't even play any sorceries. -3, you can return an artifact, creature or enchantment to its owner's hand, draw a card. So it enters the battlefield, replaces itself. If it sticks around, it's just a huge pain in the ass for your opponent, because they can only play a sorcery speed. If you play against the control deck, you basically win. They can't use their counter spells. And to close things off, 2 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor. Jace the Mind Sculptor is a great card. It was once banned in Modern because it has a lot of power in it. 4 mana Planeswalker, there's 4 abilities. Most of the time you use it for its 0 ability. You get to brainstorm, draw 3 cards and put 2 cards back on the bottom, on the top of your library. So you draw 3, put some stuff you don't need, like extra lands, you put them on top, play a fetch land, shuffle everything in your deck and try to the best cards in the late game. You can look at your top card of a player's library, put it on the top or bottom. If everything fails with your creatures, you might try to alt it to exile all cards from target player's library, then the player shuffles their hand into their library. You can win that way by just milling them out. Also you can bounce a creature. So it could get in handy if you bounce a Snapcaster Mage to get another flashback from your graveyard. You might bounce Stoneforge Mystic to find another equipment. It's just such a versatile card. Now the only thing left is to show you my sideboard. 2 copies of Ceremonious Rejection. It's 1 mana, counter target colorless spell. You can use it to counter anything in the Tron deck or the Eldrazi Tron deck. Just a great value, it's only 1 mana, it can really mess with your opponents, it counters everything in those matchups. Also we have 2 copies of Ashiok, Dreamrender. It's 3 mana, Planeswalker. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cast their controller to search their library. And it has a -1, target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, then exile each opponent's graveyard. Sometimes games go long, you can play the Ashiok. Your opponent can't track their fetch lands anymore. You can sometimes mill them out if the game goes really long. But most of the time it's graveyard head. You play against the graveyard deck, you can exile the graveyard every turn. It's just great value. Also we have 2 copies of Supreme Verdict in the sideboard. 4 mana sorcery, Supreme Verdict can't be countered, destroy all creatures. If you play against humans or Merfolk or any creature deck, any aggro deck, really, you can destroy all creatures, can't be countered. Also we have 3 copies of Adergast, 2 mana, choose target spell or permanent that's red or green. Its owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library. It's a 2 mana instant, anything red or green. When they cast it, you can put it on top or bottom, well, they can choose. So for example, against the Ponza deck, or Gruul midrange, deals with everything in the deck, permanents on the battlefield, spells on the stack, put it on the top or bottom. If something is really problematic, put it in the top. I showed you the Field of Ruin earlier. You can destroy a land, search for another land. They have to shuffle their library. So we have 1 copy of Dovin's Veto. 2 mana, the spell can't be counted. Counter target non-creature spell. If you play against a control deck, it wins your counter wars. Your opponent plays a spell you don't want to resolve, play the Veto. They can't counter it, so you're sure the spell won't resolve. So we have 1 copy of On Thin Ice. Enchant Snowland you control. We have all the Snowlands in our mana base. To play this card, when it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until On Thin Ice leaves the battlefield. So it's just an extra 1 mana removal spell for the matchups where you want 1 mana removal spells. And we have 2 copies of Celestial Purge. Remove target black or red permanent from the game. For 2 mana it exiles a black or red permanent. It can exile planeswalkers, exile creatures against the jump decks, the Death Shadow decks. It's a 2 mana instant, it can deal with anything they throw on you. It's great value. To close things off in the sideboard, we have 2 copies of Timely Reinforcements, a great card against aggro decks. 3 mana sorcery, if you have less life than an opponent, you gain 6. If you control fewer creatures than an opponent, put 3 1/1 white soldiers on the battlefield. Against burn, against prowess, against any creature deck, any aggro deck. You play it, get 3 chump blockers, it can gain you a lot of life and it keeps you alive. It's timely reinforcements to just get an extra turn to play your Supreme Verdict or something. And also we have beautiful soldier tokens. That's my sideboard.